Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from irishsportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, May 18th, Jamie? Do I have that right? May 18th?
It is the 18th.
My memory is unbelievable. We're here. We're going to be talking about the 5 keys, takeaways for how Notre Dame can make a playoff run in 2023. We get asked about that a lot, Jamie. So let me turn this on. So people can see me. There we go. We're gonna be talking about that. People ask us about that a lot. How is Notre Dame gonna are they a playoff team? Do they have what it takes to be a playoff team? So let's talk about it, right? We're gonna talk about the things that need to happen in order for them to make a deep playoff run. Obviously, they have a pretty tough schedule this year with obviously Ohio State at home, USC at home, going on the road to Clemson, plus some other difficult teams, right? I think Duke might be a little bit frisky. NC State could be a little bit frisky, right? So these are all games, kind of losable games that could come up. And so we're going to talk about how Notre Dame can navigate the schedule and be a playoff team in 2023. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. People are trickling in right now. Rob Wozniak is here. Rob, notice Jamie's new mic. Jamie, you have a new microphone and everything. How are you feeling?
It's all class right here, right?
You sound immaculate, Jamie. You sound as better than you ever have.
We're all extremely professional. This is, everyone who knows, our boss, Mike Frank, he is the king of audio. As Bucko's longtime ISD legend calls him Music Boy. He you'll see he's got the million guitars in his background whenever he does a YouTube video. He is the master audio. He got sick and tired of my previous microphone that was just picking up too much up. Which by the way, I'm not taking shots at our boss here, but he told me to order that one, so it wasn't like I chose that one. But that one was breaking down, so he's like, okay, this is enough. We got to get you a good setup. It took a little bit to set it up. I'm not the best with this kind of thing, but I think it looks pretty good here. It sounds pretty good, so that's what matters.
That's what matters, Jamie. And like I said, you sound beautiful, as good as you ever have. So it's good for you. We weathered a couple shows there where the audio wasn't as good as it could be, but here we are. Look at us now, Jamie. So thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah.
If this is your first time listening to the show,
I think somebody said I was Jamie underwater. That's what I said. And I was like, you know what? That was pretty good. That was a pretty good shot.
It's a good shot.
I couldn't hate on it.
It's a good pun, good play on words. But it didn't sound that bad. It wasn't all that. So
no, a lot of people do it. So
yeah. All right. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you know when we're going live. And if you want to catch our show on a podcast, the links are in the description below on this show. So before we get going, I want to talk to you about ESQ Clothing. If you want to upgrade your shirt game, Ga Wang at ESQ has created the world's first bamboo shirt. It is made wholly from bamboo fabric. It has stretch, feels light, feels comfortable, wrinkle-resistant, odor-resistant, machine washable, Jamie. Marcus Freeman's wearing it all over the place, as we've seen. Kentucky Derby, the White House, recruit visits. He's caravanning around the country, Jamie, and he's wearing ESQ clothing. So you're going to want to check out that stuff.
Meeting with alumni clubs all over the place.
All over the place, wearing exclusively ESQ shirts. So go to esqclothing.com and upgrade your shirt game, everybody. All right. Before we get going on how Notre Dame is going to be a playoff team to win the national championship in 2023, some big recruiting news, Jamie. Jaden Riddell, 2024 tight end, out of Georgia? Do I have that right? Out of Georgia?
No, I think he's Missouri.
Is he Missouri? I think, or he's visiting Georgia.
He's visiting Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia's a big player for him.
Yeah, he's an SEC. Like he's pretty much those are the teams. He's from Peculiar, Missouri. I have him as the 40th ranked prospect in the country. Obviously he's one of the top tight ends in the country. He's a stud.
He's visiting.
Very good. Yeah.
Set up the official visit in June, so that's going to be a big visit for Notre Dame. Obviously, Jamie? Do you think this is one of those things where this is a visit that maybe sets up another visit for the fall, or is it like, is he going to be in decision mode coming out of the summer after he takes all of his officials?
You know what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's doing, but I think most of the guys who are taking these June officials are kind of shutting it down in July.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that that's probably the case with him. He went to he visited a ton of schools. Obviously, visited Notre Dame.
Yeah.
In the spring, right? So,
mm-hmm.
and he's been to some other places. He's been to other places more than Notre Dame. So I think, and Notre Dame is in his top 5, but I'd say they're probably like 4 or 5 probably right now. They're behind. As Joe Bro mentioned, that he does have a really good relationship with CJ Carr. They play on the same 7-on-7 squad, so that's something that certainly helps Notre Dame. But you know what? I wrote in 6 thoughts today too that so since 2011, Notre Dame. I mean, everybody knows Notre Dame is tight end U, and it's one of those things to everybody says it's there's 5 different programs that say they're DBU. All these other programs say
yeah.
O-line U, whatever. And I think in terms of Notre Dame and O-line U, they have an argument, but you could say there's probably Alabama's probably more O-line U, but I mean you could say Alabama's more everything U than everything than everyone else. But there's definitely an argument for Notre Dame to be O-line U, but there is no argument that Notre Dame isn't tight end U. They are tight end U. If you start at tight end for Notre Dame, you're getting drafted into the NFL. It's an automatic. I can't even remember how many in a row it's been, but it's got to be 10, right? It's got to be 10 in a row that they've had. And then if you think about it, maybe even more than that. And then they've had since 2011, they've had 5 in the top 2 rounds, 5 in the top 2 rounds. The rest of the so here I have it here. Stanford, which, they like to say they're tight end U.
Yeah.
1. Miami, tight end U. 1. Alabama, 2. Georgia, 0. 0 Georgia for people think that, Georgia, because they've had some good tight ends lately. I mean, Brock Bowers is going to go in the top 2 rounds, but he's going to be the first guy.
Yeah.
Since 2011. Ohio State, 0, right? Iowa, which they do, they do a good job. They've had 3, and they really had, that 1 year where they had the 2 guys, right?
They had Noah Fant,
Fant and Hawkinson, right, where they went both in the top 2, or in the both in the first round, and not just they just kind of had it that year. And obviously they've had tons of guys like Kittle and a bunch of other guys. They have another guy this year went in the second round. So it's kind of one of those things where they have it, they have an argument closer to it, but they don't have as many as Notre Dame. They have a lot of later round guys, and they don't have as many total guys as Notre Dame. So in saying that, that's a long way of saying Notre Dame should win every argument when they're they should just throw that data on the table and just be no one does it better than us. You want to go to the league? Yeah, you're probably going to go to the league to whatever. But it's here, you are guaranteed to go to the league. And there's a way better chance that you're going to be a top 2 draft pick because you are going to get the ball more. They can show that to the stats and stuff too. There's no way there's anybody else who's getting as much usage as Notre Dame tight ends. So I just think this is the kind of thing where Notre Dame, you lose Keon Keeley last year, and part of the reason that you lose it, I mean, obviously the part of it was Alabama's dropping bags to his uncle or whatever. But the other part is that it's oh, well, we got Will Anderson, and before that we have this guy, and they had so many defensive linemen and edge guys that they've put in the league, and Notre Dame hasn't put guys like that as many guys, definitely not even close. And definitely not guys who are going to be top 3 picks or anything like that. So, I think that's one of the things where if that's something that's important to somebody, and I would think it's pretty important to a lot of guys, and you're going to win a lot of ball games. Tony Ventitelli mentioned, what about winning a national championship? And that could kind of lead into our next thing. Yeah, of course that matters, but it's like, I mean, Notre Dame wins a lot of games. They win a lot of games. They've been in the playoff twice. It's not like Notre Dame isn't a power program, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Maybe you don't want like the environment. Maybe you don't want to go to school in South Bend. I mean, we've seen that, right? So that could be part of it. But in terms of where Notre Dame is at in developing tight ends, they should 100% always win the argument. If the tie goes to, you produce the most NFL talent, Notre Dame wins that every time.
Well, then why are they 4th or 5th then?
I don't know. I mean, I just think he might be a guy who just grew up like it's indoctrinated. If you're like, if you watch the SEC or whatever, that the SEC is the best conference in the world, and it is the best conference. But
right.
in terms of specifically for his position, I mean, I just don't see how you can like Alabama could say, I mean, I don't think Alabama's on his list, but you know what I mean. But Alabama could say, hey, you can be the next OJ Howard or whatever. But it's like, and then, like, you know what I mean? Like they don't have as many guys as like Notre Dame has had and been these guys. Like you could say like, well, Cole Kmet went here, Michael Mayer went here. Yeah. This is where this guy went. This is how many times our guys were one of the top 5 tight ends drafted. This is whatever. This is how many starters in a row. Like all of this kind of stuff, right? And Notre Dame obviously has found good guys. Like I think tight end is also one of those weird positions where it's like the valuations aren't great. Like you look at like a lot of the top guys, and there's a lot of guys that kind of bust. Right, that are ranked in the top thing, and where Notre Dame has found guys like Tommy Tremble and Mitchell Evans, who I think were probably underrated fairly, if you were going to be fair about it, but they found these guys and developed them, and they've ended up being better. You can find guys who are like 3 stars with talent, but in saying that, I think Riddell is kind of like a Brock Bowers type, and I mean, you'd want that guy on your team, so yeah. I mean, certainly Georgia can say, hey, you can be the next Brock Bowers and all that, and they can sell that, and they're going to win championships. And you wouldn't blame him if he chose that. But I'm just saying in terms of like, Notre Dame should be really pushing. I imagine they do, but they should be really, really pushing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see, right? He's coming on an official visit, and that's what a necessary component to landing him. So let's see where it goes on that front. So yeah, that's a big deal on the recruiting front, and we can get more into that next week. We'll get back into recruiting next week on our shows as we get in, closer to the official visits and stuff like that. All right, Jamie. Well, let's transition to the 2023 football team and whether or not they can be a playoff contender, right? I kind of talked about early in the show or in the lead up, describing what the show is going to be about how they have a tough schedule this year, and they have a lot of games that you could see them playing well and not winning. And that makes it tough, right? Because I think in a lot of years, like you look back on, in 2018, they didn't have a ton of those games, right? You had the Michigan game where it's like, that's one where it's like you could play well and lose. They obviously didn't. But after that, they're just, it's just kind of the way the schedule fell, right? Like a lot of teams we thought they were going to be a lot better. Like Stanford, we thought was going to be a lot better, and they turned out to be like a 7 or 8 win team, something like that. So it didn't. At the end of the day, it didn't. They weren't that type of team. Virginia Tech wasn't as good. So USC was down that year. So it just didn't. They just didn't have those kind of teams on the schedule. And 2020, kind of the same thing, right? They had Clemson. Pitt wasn't very good. Florida State wasn't very good. So you understand what I'm saying? So
yeah.
But Notre Dame, they have that this year, right? So I think that I think the way we feel about the team kind of is married to the fact that we know what the schedule is. So let's talk about it, Jamie. The first thing I think we both had, so we're going to do a top 5, but some of ours are different. So I'm going to marry them together a little bit into the same thing. But one of them we had was Sam Hartman. You said top 10 quarterback. I said he's got to be like 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which would make him a top 10 quarterback. So it kind of goes hand in hand. This one's pretty obvious, right? Let me ask you this, though, in the context of this kind of necessity. Are you concerned that Notre Dame has come out of spring in a worse position with regard to the wide receivers, with Lorenzo Styles leaving the group and leaving the program, and Caleb Smith leaving the program as well? He was brought in. I mean, we thought he's at least going to be a contributor at the boundary, and now he's not even on the team. Are you concerned about that in terms of Sam Hartman getting to this top 10 quarterback?
Yeah, I think it makes it harder. I mean, it definitely makes it harder because even if those guys are still on the team and they're, let's say they're disappointing, they're not what anyone expected, it's still, they can still contribute. They can still make a play here and there or something like that, right? Like Styles is a guy who could, maybe catch like a pop pass and all of a sudden he's taking it for 37 yards or something. Yeah. That helps your stats certainly, right? Like, so, and Smith is a guy that even if he was, half of what he was at Virginia Tech, that's still a guy that helps the team, right? Yeah. So, that makes it harder. It also makes it that, now guys like Tobias Merriweather, Jaden Thomas, they have to be like really, really good. There's just the margin for error is smaller, right? And so I think that's the main thing. And then also too, that maybe means where before you might have said, hey, well, Mitchell Evans, he doesn't have to have that big of a year receiving or something like that, right? Like he doesn't have to be that productive. He can just be a blocker, maybe catches like 25 balls or something, and then he's just like getting some first downs here or there. Well, he might have to be more than that. Or Eli Raridan, whatever. I don't want to put too much pressure on a guy who's coming back off of a second ACL injury, but maybe he has to have a bigger role than you would have expected too. Like that's just how it kind of goes. Or the running backs, whatever, certainly too. So it's got to kind of be spread out there. But I just think that they're still capable. They still have the talent. And I don't think too that they necessarily need, Tobias Merriweather doesn't have to have 1,200 yards receiving, and then Jaden Thomas also has to be 1,000-yard receiver. It doesn't have to quite be at that level. I mean, obviously, it would be fantastic for Notre Dame if it was, but it's not like an absolute necessity for Hartman to be a top 10 quarterback, because if you look at kind of where he was at, where he was probably last year, he's a top 15 guy. It's not like they had, several guys that were like that, right? And I mean, A.T. Perry had a really good year, but he wasn't breaking records or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be like Stovall Samardzija 2005. Because Notre Dame runs the ball better than that team did, right? I mean, Darius Walker ran the ball well, but they weren't a very explosive team running the ball, for one. And for two, it was just him, right? I mean, they gave the ball to Travis Thomas a little bit, but really it was just that, it was just his show. So they were really carried by the passing game. So those guys, they had to be super explosive like that. So I mean, we could just kind of skip ahead. Like I said, and this kind of goes in line with it. I said Tobias Merriweather has to have a Equanimeous St. Brown type season, like 2016, where I think he was 58 for 938 and 9 touchdowns. That's not crazy, but I do think they need that. They can't. I don't think he can be and again, this is for them to be a playoff team, right? So it's not that it's if he doesn't have this, it's a bad year. If he catches 40 balls for 700 yards, it's he didn't have a bad season. I just don't think that they can really be a playoff team if it's he's not really good. And just because he is the guy, and there's an explosiveness element to this too. Notre Dame was not very explosive last year. Some of that had to do with the quarterback and the types of passes that they would throw with him, and with the routes that they would run and how they went about running their offense with Drew Pine. And I understand that. But Tobias is the one guy where it's hey, this he can really hurt teams from anywhere on the field with the type of player that he is as an explosive player, getting over the top. catching the ball and running. I mean, he's got some real potential there. And I think that's why he, to me, is super important. Like, he needs to be a big play guy, and he needs to have a big year for them. For Sam Hartman, like, if Sam Hartman's going to be a top 10 quarterback, like, Tobias Merriweather's going to be a huge, huge part of that, right? And I love Jaden Thomas. This isn't anything about Jaden Thomas. It can't just be one guy for one. And I just don't think he has the juice that Tobias does on, like, a national stage. Like, I don't, like, if you told me there's one receiver on Notre Dame's football team who is going to have, 8 catches for 166 and 3 touchdowns, who is it? I'm going to say it's Tobias, right? I just don't like the Jaden Thomas to me is like a 9-catch 130 guy, like that. That's something like that. Whereas I think Tobias can, like 20 yards per pop and that sort of thing. So that's where I think where Tobias really needs, like, he needs to be a guy, because again, they don't have Lorenzo Styles on the team. Like, I could have seen last year where if Lorenzo Styles was at wide receiver, just a couple random 5 catches, 110 and a touchdown, where it's just like he just had a couple random games where it's like he made a big difference. And so you don't necessarily need that. I think with him off the roster and with Caleb Smith off the roster, I do think Tobias now is super important to them being a playoff team in 2023.
I think that's 100% right. I think that, like, okay, so that EQ example of 2016, like, so where he had like the 79-yard touchdown against I believe it was Syracuse, right?
Syracuse. Like, he had a couple.
He had a bunch of like big plays that year, right? He showed like he was explosive. And yeah, that is exactly the kind of impact that he has. And I mean, it is actually crazy. Like, EQ St. Brown, obviously, he's the guy that he got hurt the most by the 2017, like, the quarterback play, because I think if Kaiser would have came back, he would have just had another month. He would have a better year, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I think at the very least, he would have had a similar type of year to that. And I think I don't think it's crazy to think that Tobias could have done that, because really, if you look at EQ's freshman year, pretty similar. I think he caught like one pass. I think one pass for like 8 yards or something.
Yeah, right? And he blocked a punt.
Yes, which was a big block against USC.
It was
very big.
It was very big.
But yes, I think like that kind of thing, I think is pretty realistic for me. And obviously, we need to see it, and it has to happen on the field. But one thing to remember about receivers too is sometimes it doesn't happen right away. It's not like one of these things where it's like first game, guy went off, he's gonna go whatever. A lot of times, like where like Miles Boykin, remember, because he obviously had the great spring that in 2018, he had the great camp, and then he kind of started slow, and then obviously he took off when the quarterback, when that switch was made. So
yeah.
I think with Hartman, it's just all there for Tobias to have that kind of year. And I mean, I think that element, he does have a little bit more juice than Thomas in that, like, kind of like the deep part of that.
It's just necessary. Pops, let's see. There was a wide receiver last year who cursed out his position coach. Who was it? I don't know. I didn't say it. We didn't say it, so it's not anything that we're going to comment on because we didn't say it. So
also, don't ask us questions from other people. Like we don't want to get into those rumors or anything. It's not really our place. If we report it, we report it. If we're not going to comment on other stuff and speculate.
Yeah. Tony Ventitelli says it's a lot to ask with a kid for one career catch. I mean, here's the thing. It's all good, Pops. Don't worry about it. It is a lot to ask. But the way I see it is like, if you're going to be if you're a starting field player with Sam Hartman as your quarterback, that's what the numbers should be, right? You have to do it. Like, especially if they're going to be a playoff team. Because again, like that's hovering over all of this. Like I said, if he has a 40 catch season for 700 yards, that's fine. I'm not going to rip him or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, they probably won't be a playoff team in that instance. They need more than that from their starting field, because again, they don't have really anyone behind him who it's like, yeah, like if Tobias is having a bad game, then he'll step in and do it, right? Like I just don't see that happening, right? And that's where I'm a little bit concerned about the Sam Hartman thing being a top 10 quarterback. It has nothing to do with Sam Hartman at all. It just has to do with like USC, for example, right? Jordan Addison gets hurt and he doesn't play. He didn't play for like 2 or 3 games. Well, then Brennan Rice comes in and he takes over. And it's like when you just have multiple people that can come in.
Kyle Ford has like 100-yard.
Kyle Ford has
he was a
random 100-yard game, and now he's out of the program because they have too many people. But like that's the thing. It's like when you just have guys you can put in there. I don't think Notre Dame has the guys. Like literally, they don't have the numbers. And it's like I'm not going to ask Braylon James to do it.
Yes, they need to stay healthy. That's a given. All these things, we should mention that. It's with the caveat that the best players stay healthy, because I don't think Notre Dame is deep enough at certain positions that if a key guy goes down, I think that is, I don't know how they're going to recover in a lot of instances at a lot of positions. Sorry, who was it? Tony, who brought up the thing about the one career catch. There's a lot of guys who basically do nothing as freshmen at receivers that have big second years. That's not in it. I mean, obviously it's a Notre Dame thing in terms of Will Fuller. You just
had 6 catches in 2013, 76 in 2014.
Yeah, St. Brown, right? There's been guys that's happened for at Notre Dame, but that is also something that has happened. Like, I mean, you could find it at like Alabama. You can find it. There's numerous examples of that, right? Where sometimes it's like because they're blocked in terms of like depth chart. Sometimes it's like, well, these guys got to kind of actually learn the offense. They had the talent. Yeah. They just maybe need to learn the offense. And I think part of that was part of the thing with Tobias. And then the other part was he was hurt. So that at the end of the year. So
yeah, that hurt him. That hurt him a lot. All right. Let's go to the next one, which I think might be the most important. I think I put it like this because I'm not sure how you felt. Offensive line must be a Joe Moore Award finalist. I don't know. Was that when you texted me? Was that they got to be a finalist, yes, or it's just like caliber? Okay, they do have to be a finalist. And mine to you, and so we can marry them together. Is like I think Billy Schrauth needs to be a guy. He does. I don't think they can be a finalist if both guards are just kind of meh. If the guards are whatever, then I don't think they'll get there. It's too important. I don't think they can get there. So, and I think at least one of them has to be a dude, and I think that's Billy Schrauth. He has to be a dude. But the line itself has to be a Joe Moore Award finalist, Jamie. How confident in this are you?
6 out of 10 confident.
6, so that's 60%.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm not like I'm not like 100% convinced. I do think they're going to be pretty good. I would say locked to be like a semi-finalist. I would be surprised if they weren't. But basically to be a CFP team or like a champion kind of thing, you have to kind of be at least the bare minimum is like semi-finalist, right?
Yeah.
But when Notre Dame has had their best teams, first of all, both of the years that they, you look at it, when they had that 2018 team, the defense kind of carried them. So they didn't have that. But the 2020 team, certainly, like the offensive line was like what carried them.
Yeah.
And if you look at that 2015 offense, and obviously they had a ton of skill talent, but like that offensive line was the best. That was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award.
If you look at their Football Outsiders stats, like their line stats, they were as good or better than the 2017 line.
Yeah. And so I think that's like, you got to kind of have that level. You got to have that. And especially because I think with, some of the questions, like we're questioning about the depth at receiver, we're questioning about some of these other things too. And if Hartman's going to be top 10, I mean, you better be protected pretty darn well, and you better be able to run the ball. And if you're going to be an offensive line driven program, and where Notre Dame is at, and how they're built, that has to be something. They have to be one of the best offensive lines of college football. They certainly have the tackles to do it. I think Zeke Correll, he's the kind of center that you kind of need, that veteran center, really smart guy. I thought he looked really great in spring. I agree. A lot depends on the guard. I'm not 100% convinced Billy Schrauth is going to be that. Not to say that they won't need him, but I just, obviously there's a long way to go, right? But he really had it's one of these things, you don't want to overreact to the spring game, but he really didn't anchor very good at all in the spring game. Like, he was getting walked back a lot. That's concerning. So whatever kind of combination they have at guard, that has to be something. And somebody mentioned Jagusa as well. I mean, it's really tough for like a guard to start as a true freshman. I mean, Quentin Nelson didn't. It kind of says a lot, right? Like, could he? I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't think it's crazy, because he is going to be a guy as long as he's healthy. Because I know he's coming off an injury, but like, as long as he's healthy, physically he's a guy who could probably hang. Like, he is a dude. But I don't know. It's a lot to ask, but we'll see how they go with guard. But it's obviously you got to get it right. You got to be at least like above average at those positions. And if you can get one guy who's like emerging to above average to great, then you're really cooking.
Yeah. Corey Flynn mentions the offensive line has gotten off to slow starts the last couple of years. That could still happen. It could. This is the year for it. If you have
that happens at almost every school.
Yeah. But this is a good year for that, because they play Navy and Central Michigan to start the season. So, like, let's go. Like, have a slow start there, and then move on to the meat of the schedule. That's fine. Zach Davis is asking, are there any early sentiment readings on Joe Rudolph?
As in, like,
just like you've heard good things, I guess, but the good development from the offensive line. Are they taking to his style, that sort of thing?
I mean, I heard a lot of positive things in terms of like Harry Heastan was obviously a really good technical coach, but he was a guy who really concentrated on the starters.
Yeah,
and he's like, get that 5, and then that was the 5 that you really kind of hit home with. So the back end of the roster guys, that's why some of those guys, at least in their minds, that's why they didn't develop as much, because they didn't get as much attention from him. And I think Rudolph is a guy who puts more emphasis on everybody. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's good in terms of like the competition. I think positive vibes in terms of people seem to like him and like the style right now. Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I mean, he's obviously got a good track record, so we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. Justin Knox asks, is there an equivalent to Antonio Carter on offense in the portal at wide receiver or guard as far as impact? Justin thinks Antonio Carter is an NFL player. We have, as far as I know, we haven't heard anything about an offensive player coming in from the portal. There could be someone in the portal that isn't, I guess, public about it at this point. But I think we would have heard,
Well, here's the other thing, is that portal window, that's for undergrads. Like a grad transfer can go in at any time, and just so somebody could. I mean, they're not at this point. Like, it's probably not. Like, it would be pretty shocking. But I guess somebody could. But if you go through the list of like, because I'm looking at the guards and stuff, and who there's not a lot of good guards out there. Like the kid from Maryland that Notre Dame was like, hey, didn't offer, but they were going to maybe get on campus, and I think he went to LSU. Like, watched some film on him, and he wasn't that good. Like, I was like, if this guy wins the job at Notre Dame, they're in trouble. Like that was my kind of thought with it. And first of all, like offensive line and defensive line and how programs treat those guys who are in the portal, they're so rare to get good ones that those guys are like gold. So that's why like that Western Michigan kid, Braden Fisk. Yeah, he was like, had a million offers from all these people. And I got to be honest, I don't think that guy's that good. Like, I mean, certainly he'd be going to the league if he was not being like a 6th-year guy trying to go to Florida State or whatever. But he was like, there was like bidding wars for him, right? Like, and I think he could be fine. He can play in the ACC, but and I don't know what Florida State's situation is, but I don't think he was going to start at Notre Dame. Just based on if I compared him to what Notre Dame has, like I don't think you're going to get much more out of him than
Did we lose Jamie? Jamie? Did we lose the show? If you're in the chat, let me know you can still hear me. Let me know if you can still hear me, because Jamie is gone, and so I want to make sure that we're still live and people are still watching the show here. Because I think he was going to say Javonte. There you are.
Yes. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if you can still hear me or not. I just kept talking because I wasn't sure.
Yeah. No. You died. So I think you were about to say. Javonte Jean-Baptiste. He wouldn't be that much better than Javonte Jean-Baptiste.
Oh, I was going to say Jason Onye.
Oh, okay.
Like in terms of what you saw from Onye this spring, like that's kind of what I would expect from Fisk. Like a guy who can play and maybe help, right? The mic overpowered it. That's but I think it's like one of these things where like a lot of those guys at those positions, it's really hard to find somebody that you're going to do it. And those guys, there's like a handful of guys every year. Like certainly like Michigan got the guy from Virginia last year, right? Who played center, and he was a good player for them, a really good player for them. But like, there's not a lot of guys. There weren't a lot of guys who were at that level that, came from the portal, that played O-line, that went to places. And more of those, and those guys are guys like whatever, people are dropping big bags to try to get those guys, even though they're like, a lot of them aren't that great. Yeah.
So it's just, I don't see it happening, Justin, to just go back to your comment. Like, I don't see it as of this moment that we haven't heard a name. It's not likely. I think what they got is what they got. I mean, we knew that they were looking at, they wanted a safety. I mean, they were talking about this for a long time. So anybody out there, any player out there who was like debating, it's spring ball, like, what do I want to do? People knew Notre Dame was in the market for a safety, and it just wasn't like that with receiver or guard. So that also makes a big difference. All right, moving on. I'm going to just jump around here. All right, let's talk about Botelho and Mills, Jamie. Because here's the thing about Mills. I could see Botelho, and here's the thing about Botelho for me is when he plays, when he is out there, his pressure rate is astronomically good. It is very good. So for him, it's easy just to kind of say, all right, when he's out there, he's got like 24% pressure per pass rush, right? Which is really good. I mean, we're talking Foskey was something like 15% or 14% or something like that, right? It just wasn't and Foskey's number was good. Like if you look across the nation, right?
Anything above 20 is like awesome.
Anything above 20 is like you're actually going to be a Hall of Famer. And so, but and so look, I don't expect him to have like a 24% pressure rate per pass rush in 2023. I don't. That would like literally would be like an all-time season that he has. I don't expect that. But you can just extrapolate, okay, we're going to give him more snaps. When he plays, he produces, and he produces really well, right? So I could see it with Botelho. With Riley Mills, it seems like it's mostly, it would really be nice if this happened. And there's not a ton of evidence for it. There's some, but there's not a ton of it. And so that's where, to me, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know about Riley Mills. I could see it, but it's like the evidence isn't there like it is for Botelho. What do you think about that, Jamie?
I'm 100% in agreement with that. I do think that like Botelho, he's a much safer bet to have a big breakout year.
Yeah.
And so Botelho in the Gator Bowl, he had 2 sacks, 10 pressures, 10. Like if you're getting double-digit pressures in a game, you're dominating the game, and he did really like. And if you think about it, like the one Benjamin Morrison pick at the end of the game, like his pressure caused that pick. Like that's something that he was making a direct impact on that game, and they probably don't win the game if he's not having that kind of game, really. And considering that, like, you know, you lose Isaiah Foskey, but you get a kind of game from a guy like that, I mean, that's huge. So he had that, and then he also just, you know, he had 6.5 tackles for loss basically in like the second half of the season, or the last like 6 games of the season, right? So that's big time production, and he wasn't playing that much. So yeah, it's easy to project to say, well, he's going to play more. He might not produce at the same level, but he'll still produce and have a really good year. With Mills, so I wrote about this in 6 Thoughts where, so Tillery, a lot of people were like, oh man, Tillery had this big jump. If you look at the 2017 season, Tillery was fantastic that season.
Yeah.
He just played nose, so he wasn't kind of like getting as much attention. He had to deal with a lot more double teams, but he was really good. And it's like his pressure numbers, he was like top 10 in like Power 5, like interior pass rushers in terms of his pressure rate, right? And total pressures. He was awesome, right? So that, like, he was really good before then. So he had, and then he just had the same kind of thing. And he had like a lot of dominant games, right? A lot of dominant games where you were like, oh, he's like the best guy on the field. He's really like kicking the crap out of these guards or whatever, right? And Mills hasn't had those games. He had the one game against Virginia, but
in 2021,
where he got the game ball, and he was very good in that game. I don't want to just act like whatever. He was very good in that game. But even that totality of the game, it was more of like he had these dominant plays. It wasn't like he dominated the entire game. And he didn't have any game like that last year. Okay, the one thing is that when the guy's like a freak, he's a monster. He's huge. He can run. Like, I think he did make Bruce Feldman's freaks list. Like, he is 100% this guy. If he is not getting drafted into the NFL in the next year or two, it's on him, because he is like got all the talent in the world, right? Just physical talent in the world. And he was playing outside last year, and he's just a better player. He's better suited to be a 3-tech. Right. Okay.
That the new mic again is too strong. Hopefully it's corrected itself. Let me check.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Well, what are you gonna do? But yeah, so Sheldon Day had a huge jump in his last year. Some of that was like, the switch to Keith Gilmore. Some of that was being healthy. So could happen, but it's probably not as likely.
Yeah. It just really, Corey Flint says you really emphasize the point. So yeah, it's just tough. Like you want it to happen, and it's one of those things like it kind of needs to happen because he's the one who can do it. But he just didn't, and it's like we haven't seen it, and so that makes it difficult to project. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a possibility of like, I still think this is one of those, like, if you hit one of them, like if one of these guys, like let's say it's Botelho, right, who has the big leap, and Riley Mills is just kind of what he's been. I still think they can be a playoff team, but I do think one of them has to take the leap. I do. It has to be one of them. And so we'll kind of see who it is. I think we think that it can be Botelho, a lot more likely to be Botelho. With Botelho, I get kind of concerned. Like, how in basketball, like you have someone who it's like, oh, he's 2 for 3 from 3 or 2 for 4 from 3, right? He should shoot more threes. And it's like, well, the reason that he is so effective is because the threes that he's taking are actually really good and they're quality. And if you take more, then the quality diminishes. And so with Botelho, it's like in short time, he's really good because they're really quality reps because he's not out there very much. He doesn't have the wear and tear. And the bowl game is evidence. It's like, hey, he can actually handle like a full role. The only thing is, like, over the course of an entire season, that's a different kind of animal as well. So that we'll see how that plays out. But I think we agree, like, more confidence in Botelho making it happen. Justin Knox has a Botelho story. Let's hear about it. Shout out to Botelho. I was fortunate enough to travel to Honolulu with my high school team. So Justin played at Mater Dei, I believe. I believe that's right. I might not be right. Check me on that, Justin. Definitely played in California. At St. Louis, has some freaks. Famatu Maafala was on that team. It was like trying to tackle a car going 20 miles per hour. So good. Good story about Hawaii football there, Justin. Thank you very much for that. All right. Let's move on. I want to talk about Cam Hart. Team. I'm a big Cam Hart guy. Hand up, big Cam Hart guy. Love his potential. Love his physical attributes. I think his numbers are better, and I've had this conversation on the show many times. I think his numbers are better than what people think that they are. He doesn't have a ton of ball production, and the other part is he just has mental lapses at times, and I think those need to go away. I think if he puts his game together, this is like a 3rd round, 4th round pick, maybe even 2nd round pick. If he really makes it happen, because I think he's fast enough. I bet you he's like a high 4.4 guy at the combine. But it has to come together for him. This is his last season. It's like lock in, man, lock in. And him and Ben Morrison can be just like one of the best corner duos that Notre Dame's had in a very long time. And another part too is his shoulder, which is not really his. It's not as in his control, right? If he has a bad shoulder, he has a bad shoulder. He plays through it. What are you laughing at, Jamie? Let me check.
I just Bernie taking shots.
I like Hart more than. Please don't, Bernie. Please don't. All right.
Bernie always surprises with some just hate coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
He starts talking about the end. He's going to dominate, and then he's like, "Now I got to get a shot in here."
Yeah. So, but yeah. So it needs to happen, and I think if it does, and I think Notre Dame can really, because I like the safeties now. I like the Xavier Watts situation. I like the Antonio Carter situation. I like the rotation that they can have with DJ Brown and Ramon Henderson. I think you can get a lot out of all those guys. Like Rajon says, the health is a main thing for Cam Hart. But with the offenses that Notre Dame has on the schedule this year, with Ohio State, with USC, obviously, and then even going to Clemson, right, with new offensive coordinator, they're going to throw the ball a bunch. I just think Cam Hart, man, he's a big key to this defense.
You're not beating USC or Ohio State unless Notre Dame's getting an elite cornerback play in both those games.
Yeah.
That's 100%. So I think this is a fair one. The only thing that I would say is that if Hart has a good year, but he doesn't have all the way where he reaches his potential. I still think there's a chance that Jaden Mickey ends up being like, oh, he took a big jump this year. So I think that's something to monitor as well. But I will say that, I mean, if Hart's doing it, and then because I do think that Mickey is going to be better, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Whatever, he's going to be a sophomore. He get a lot of playing time. As junior, I think he's a smart kid, definitely athletic, competitive kid. He's going to be good this year. And if they can get that, and they get that kind of three corners where that that makes everything on defense that much easier. And like, man, Egbuka and Harrison, and just, USC's just got a ton of guys. It's you got to be able to match up.
Yeah, and so you look at the playoff teams, right? Like Ohio State, good corner play. Georgia, really good corner play. Alabama always has good corners. Like the team, like TCU, like Michigan had good corners, right? With Will Johnson, and then they had the kid who got drafted. I can't remember his name, but he got drafted. He's like a really good athlete. Turner. DJ Turner's like, he was really good. And so you have these guys. The only team that didn't have that was TCU, and Notre Dame can't make the playoffs playing the teams that TCU plays, because they're not playing them. Like, they are playing the Ohio States. They are playing the USCs, right? They are playing those teams. And so you can't get by without really good corner play, like really good, right? We think Ben Morrison can be an elite corner, and I think Cam Hart has elite college football corner in him, and I think it's in there, and I hope he gets there, because I think it's been a long time coming for him, and I think it would do wonders for Notre Dame's defense there. I think it would be a very big development. All right, Jamie. Special teams must continue to thrive. I don't think we're going to see the block punts, but we don't have to see there's lots of ways to be a good special teams team. You're right. You can be good with kickoff returns. Notre Dame was not very good with kickoff returns last year. They were good with punt coverage in terms of punt setting up their situation. I think Brandon Joseph was very good at catching the punt and getting 10 yards. And that matters. It matters a lot. Notre Dame was one of the best field position teams, if not the best field position team in college football last year. That's a big deal. It's not just about returning punts. It's about setting up your offense to be in a good situation, and obviously with kickoff coverage as well. I think the kicking game is a big part of that. I think Blake Grupe was good, but it's like, man, I didn't have a ton of confidence. It's like he comes up and it's like, I just don't think he's going to make this, right? And I think by percentage, his field goal kicking was pretty good.
He was fine. I don't know. He was okay though.
Yeah, you did. For some reason, I would have felt a lot more confident with Jonathan Dorr kicking a game-winning field goal than I would have from Blake Grupe.
So, oh yeah, Dorr will miss the first kick of the game, but he would be clutch when it mattered.
Dorr never missed one of consequence ever. I mean, he missed obviously he missed field goals in games that mattered, but he never missed a game winner. He never 5 field goals against USC or 5 field goals against Clemson in 2020. He was clutch, right? And I didn't feel so. Notre Dame can get back to that, and they need to get back to that. They got the transfer kicker from USF, Schrader. So that's a big one, Jamie. What do you think is most likely? I know Biaggi was a former kicker, so do you think that that's going to be the one where it comes, where Notre Dame takes a big jump next year in special teams?
Yeah, I think so. And then I when Biaggi was hired, I mentioned that of all the kickers that he's had, I think the average percentage was 84% or something like that. It was really high for college kickers. And obviously he's having different kickers all the time. And he was a guy who was a kicker, he's coaching these guys. So I would say that kicking game, they're going to be better. Place kicking, right? And punting, obviously, Salt was very good, right? McPherson, I think, really a chance to be great. But I think the main thing is what you said, Greg, about the field position, right? That's the thing. You have to be able to you got to dominate the field position. And that's the one thing that Brian Mason probably didn't get enough credit for, because it's always the blocks, and the blocks were great, obviously. And Notre Dame doesn't want to have a thing where they're like, well, we only had 1 block punt this year. It's 7 is going to be hard. But there's no reason why, if you're aggressive with the athletes that Notre Dame has, that they can't get 4 a year and have that be like an average year, right? Like that I think is something. But and I also like, as people are just naming like returners, former returners that Notre Dame has had over the years too, right? Like, I mean, obviously, you've seen Tyree like take one back to the crib against Wisconsin. That's something that they can get better in terms of blocking and the kick return game, just something a little bit more there. Obviously, there isn't as many chances there. And you just never know. Like, I think like they should have options there with maybe be a little bit more explosive. Obviously, Joseph wasn't an explosive guy. He was just, like you said, efficient.
Yeah. So Justin Knox is asking the last time Notre Dame's been great at returns, and he's emphasizing great. So what's this? Notre Dame cheat sheet brings up CJ Sanders and George Atkinson. CJ Sanders returned a kickoff and a punt for a touchdown in 2015. That's pretty rare as far as like recently happening. Zibby was good. Those 2005 teams were not good kickoff return teams, though. I'd say the last great return team was like 2000, when it was like every return that they had was like you feel like it'd go to the house. Like Julius Jones returned a kickoff for a touchdown against Nebraska. They returned 2 punts for a touchdown against Nebraska. Or no, I'm sorry, 1 punt for a touchdown and 1 kickoff return for a touchdown against Nebraska.
Jones had the thing. Gethrell had the punt return. Yeah,
Gethrell returned a punt for a touchdown against West Virginia that year. So they were very good in 2000. Blocked a ton of kicks, blocked field goals, blocked punts. 2000 was amazing.
I would say CJ Sanders was the best. Because you look at it, he returned 4 kicks in 2 years. That's a lot. Like, that's good. Like, if you're doing 2 in a year, that's great, right? Yeah. And then I believe he also had one called back against Syracuse or maybe another team too. So like he was an explosive returner. Like, he was great. Obviously, he had the big one against Stanford as well too. Like, You
good?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, okay.
He was the last great return. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say CJ Sanders was the one. It's funny. Like, I feel like we always have these guys who come in. Like, I thought Lorenzo Styles was going to be like day 1 punt returner guy. Didn't return 1. Never.
Yeah.
So you just don't know, man. You don't know how they're gonna emphasize it or what it's gonna be or any of those things. Tony Vendatelli, he thinks Micah Bell will be an electric returner. Okay,
he's got a shot.
He's a running back. You know, he's used to having the ball in his hands.
I think he's got a real chance. Yeah,
he's a 10-4 guy, like legit 10-4, and that's pretty special. So that's what that is. All right, Jamie. I think we should end it there. I think those are some good things to focus on for the 2023 season, making a playoff run. I guess it's hard. Like, I don't think we're really going to know these things. You know, it's like, I guess we'll find out a little bit about the offensive line and the receivers and stuff in camp. We'll start to hear some things, but we got to get to the games to find out. So it'll be interesting. I think they have a chance. Corey Flynn. He wants to talk Lakers. My sons ran into the Nuggets buzzsaw. Sorry, Greg. I think Lakers' fate will be the same. Can't say I mind Lakers going down as a Suns fan. Well, Corey, you know what? It is what it is. I don't. The Nuggets are good. Jokic is unbelievable. He's a real problem.
Lakers
so we'll
still got a shot.
They got a shot. I'm not down on anything. It's going to be a long series. Yeah, it's going to be a long series. So we'll see how it goes. But thank you, Corey Flynn, for bringing up the NBA. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button, people. We're right there at 6,000 subscribers. I want to reach it before next week. That would be great. Tell your friends. Tell your friends. Tell your parents. Tell your sisters. Tell your brothers. Family members, cousins, aunts, everybody. We got a good show here. So we'll be back next week talking about we'll probably talk about recruiting again on Tuesday, and then we'll get into some more stuff on Thursday. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a good weekend, and we will talk to you next week.